going on, guys? Hit pause here with a very quick tutorial on something pretty cool that I just came up with, and I figured I'd share it for the holiday season. This here is my Game Jam submission, which hopefully does well. I don't know if it will, but anyways, what I wanted to show was if I simulate this guy, I got something pretty cool here. It's very simple. Basically what I got are these Christmas lights that are oscillating their colors down the chain here. You can see the yellow go through all the way down there, and I got them on the candy canes here, and I got them on the little gingerbread house. I don't have them on that side yet, but I got them on all the candy canes, and you can see the color will shift through. There's some pretty cool glare when you get up to them. Okay, and they go in sequence, so the hue is basically traveling down the length of the chain here. As you can see, you can follow the purple as I go through. So how do we do it? It's it's so simple. It probably don't even need to make this video, to be honest. So basically we have two things. We have a material and we have a spline actor. So if I hit G here, you can see I click the spline and I've got basically a spline component here. I got one here. I've got one here. Okay, and I've got one on each of these here that just swirls around it like that. And on that spline component we do the general, basically kind of a standard method of spawning things down the length. We get the length, we divide it by spacing. In this case my spacing is 10 here. We get the whole and remainder. We do a for loop based on that last index. We do the get world location at distance along spline, and the distance would be the index times the spacing. Okay, we make a transform out of that. I did a random rotation on them. For rotation scale, I had to bring these down to 0.01. This would be dependent on whatever mesh you're using, so we do that. I spawn this class XLight. The class itself is actually kind of like pretty much nothing here. I had done some other methods of doing this. That's all this is. It's pretty much just a mesh. Okay, and you can see that the color is actually shifting on the mesh itself. That is actually achieved here. Quite simple. We use a hue shift. The thing when at least for this, when I wanted to do this, you want to start with a primary color if you're doing something like this. So either one in any one of these fields would basically work. So any of the three primary colors. Just if you do like 0.5 or 111, it's just going to be white. Nothing will change, right? Or if you do 000, you'll hue shift against black. And then we just multiply. We add time, and all I did was slow down the time by just dividing this. If I don't do that, you can see that it's really fast. So if I go into the game here, you can see that's pretty much really going fast. Right? It's hauling ass. I like it slower, so I slowed it down. You could do it really slow, so it'd be really subtle. Somebody would have to actually really sit there and notice. But that's all we do. So, and then we just add that to a parameter here for the hue shift. Now, hue shift, I originally thought percentage meant that it went on a 0 to 100 scale, but in fact it is on a 0 to 1 scale. Just note that. I also have a parameter for brightness, so we multiply. The material itself is actually unlit. That's basically the only thing about it that's anything weird. So I pipe this into emissive and we get the nice bloomy glow there. Okay, back to the XMasLights. So after I spawn each one at its position, I get the mesh basically, which is the light mesh here. You can see it's named light. Okay, so we get that, and we create a material dynamic instance, and I have a variable here called hue, which starts off at 0. So basically what I do is after I've created the dynamic instance, I set the parameter of hue shift, which is again right here, which gets fed into the hue shift. This is just a function that they gave. Okay. So I feed that in, and then after that what I do is I add 0.01 to it, and I do a modulo based on the value of 1. Now that basically means that if this value hits this value, it will return it back to 0, so that's how we get a cycle here. Now the length of my color shift is controlled right here, basically the length of the spectrum, I suppose, across the entire chain here. So if I did 0.001, they would it would be almost like, you know, from start to finish you'd be going from like red to yellow barely. But if I did 0.1, the first 10 lights would cover that entire spectrum. Okay, and then I do a random float for brightness, and that's it. That's the whole thing. So on start, so the point is that every time, so remember this is on a loop, so each new one that gets added gets a hue shifted up of 0.01, again returns back to 0 if it hits 1. We reset that value, so that's going to keep cycling through from 0 to 1 on each one as it adds them through the chain. And then again I do this, and that's the only code. That's all we have, and it works. Takes a moment to load up, and that's it. That's pretty cool, pretty simple. I don't have the chord in here yet. It's not in here. I'm going to add that next, but that's beside the point of what I'm doing here. But I like it. I think it's pretty nifty little trick. It's relatively light. There are a lot of meshes here. That's where all of the overhead comes from. I could simply increase my spacing to have less of them, and I could not go as crazy with how many I'm actually trying to put out. But I figured, you know, I wanted it to look really nice. I tried to avoid any kind of tick code. Let me make sure you guys can hear me over the windstorm there. I tried to avoid any kind of tick code because I just don't want that overhead, you know, so that's why I'm doing it in the material, which is pretty much the easiest way to do it anyway. Right here. That's really, really easy, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that, and Merry Christmas.